Hi folks, my perspective here. In this video clip, I'll be looking at some footage that was filmed in the northern hemisphere near the North Pole. And this is the footage. We know that the guy used a wide angle lens, so there's some distortion, so we're going to just counter that, make the horizon flat. He's using a wide angle. And what we're going to do is we're going to look at speed, light, and the motion. You see, what is actually going on in this footage? Is the earth spinning, or is the man turning around? Now look at the light on the ocean, look where the sun is, look at the shadows, and look how the mountains and everything rotates around the man. See, there's a problem. You see, if this man was in a spinning ball, the shadows and the mountain and the motion wouldn't look like this. What's happening is the sun is turning around the man, is orbiting around the man, and the man is simply turning his camera and pointing it towards the sun. So the earth isn't spinning. The sun is orbiting above. That's why the sun is reflecting on the water as it is. Look at the shadows. So to help us understand this, imagine a train wheel. Right, the wheel turns on its axis. That's got a shaft, and the shaft is fixed off center. Right, so the shaft moves forward, it pushes the wheel, and the shaft comes back and pulls the wheel around. Okay, so the wheel rotates and the shaft is off center. So we're not don't focus on where the shaft is pointing. Look at the wheel and the position of the shaft. And so what do you see? Right? So basically this is what should be happening with the man who's filming the footage. So do you see? There's a couple of issues already that should be happening in that video footage that's not happening. So if we put a man on top of that shaft, the first issue is, as the man turns, he'd be crossing the light source, so the blue line in the middle, right, where the sun is. He'd be crossing over the sunlight, backwards, left and right. But in the footage, the light is actually following him. Another issue is, look at the wheel itself. Think about his frame of reference. So from his frame of reference, the wheel should move out in front of him. The horizon can't stay the same. The horizon should rise up and move around him. Right? And he should be moving over the blue line. You see how the blue line, which would be the reflection of the sunlight. Because the sun is fixed. So the issue is the light itself, right, which would be the blue line. From his perspective, everything would be he'd be standing still, and the wheel would be turning around him. So the light would be swinging from his left and to his right, and the landmass should be pushing out in front of him and rotating back around him. We don't see this in the video clip. You see, what we see in the video clip is that everything is moving in perfect position around him. Another issue is, there's arrows here, so don't look at them, just look at the blue arrow, left and right. You see, as the person moves backwards, he also has to move to his right. In other words, if he moves back 1,000 kilometers, he has to swing to his right 2,000 kilometers. So his frame of reference wouldn't be turning around him, it would be pushing and sliding out towards his right. So, for example, the orange frame is where it started. As he moves around, because he's off center, remember? The landmass would push to his right. Watch the blue arrow on the right, left and right. Do you understand? And the footage doesn't show this. The footage, it's constant. So he's turning. He's not spinning around. He's not spinning off center. Do you understand? So from his perspective, the landmass would push to the right. And it's not. It's actually rotating around him. So the Earth isn't spinning. The man is turning and he's forming the sun, which is orbiting overhead. The second issue is we're going to look at the gold arrows. You see, if he's spinning off center, now watch, the gold arrows would point towards him, right? Because he's off center. So everything in front of him would actually be turning in front of him because he's off center. So watch the arrows. Now they'll turn and face the other way. They're turning in front of him. So if he was spinning around a fixed axis, remember, for everything to turn around him, he'd have to be standing at the North Pole, exactly on the North Pole, so that everything turns perfectly around him. Or the Earth is standing still and he's just turning, forming the sun orbiting overhead. So this is what we see in the footage. He's turning and he's forming the sun, which is turning overhead. So look at the arrows, the gold arrows. They all keep the relative position. As he turns, everything stays fixed in its position to his frame of reference. So it's quite simple, really. Look at the sunlight on the water. I mean, it's just so obvious, you know. I mean, the Earth's flat and he's turning. There's nothing complicated, nothing hard to understand in this. Okay, so he's turning, right? So everything would be relative to his position because he's turning, right? This is what we see. He's looking at the sun. He's turning. For this to happen and the Earth was turning, he'd have to be standing exactly dead center of the spinning Earth at the North Pole. And we know he's not. He's somewhere in the northern hemisphere, but he's not at the North Pole. Okay, so everything would turn around him and keep the relative position fixed to his position. Right, and that's what we see in the video footage. Okay, whereas if he's off center, right, this is what should happen. You see, the shadows and the light and things in the far distance would have to move faster the further away they are from him. It's actually so simple. And then they would change their position and things in the front of him would be moving slower and things further away would be moving faster because he's off center and he's turning on a ball. So if you speed it up, that's what it would look like. And that's not what we're seeing in the video footage. Right? Everything would be spinning in front of him. Whereas what's happening is everything's rotating around him. So, right, slow down again so that you get it. Okay. But in the footage, you see, if you look at the footage again, that's what's happening. So he's turning, he's looking at the sun, and the sun is orbiting around him. Okay, let's look at the footage again now. Look at the light. Look at the shadows. The sun's not 150 million kilometers away. It's above him and it always stays above him. Watch when the sun moves away. Look how it still hits the surface. That's because of perspective. The sun's always above this guy's head. He's just turning, following the sun. Right? And watch when the sun hits the water. Remember, if he was off center, he'd be moving across the reflection, backwards and forwards. And that's not happening. Right, so it's simple enough. So if he's turning, the shadows would be elongated and they would swing at 6 o'clock in the morning and 6 o'clock at night, late. It would swing the opposite way. Do you understand? In other words, the shadows should cross over like this. And they'd always be elongated. You can't escape that. And we don't see this in the footage. So if he's off center, the shadows further away would be spinning faster. You see? Watch the shadows. Remember, everything further away, it would be spinning faster from his perspective. All orbiting around their own fixed axis. Right? Does that make sense? Just look at the footage, look at the animation. And I mean, I didn't cheat here, just put the light source out, and it is what it is, you know. This is not difficult to understand. Look, you don't need maths for the stuff, really. It's just, it's logical. And we're going to get into a bit of maths later on, and I'll show you how people cheat and trick things. Right, so from a shadow point of view, remember he's off center. He's got his frame of reference, he's looking at the sun. When he gets furthest away, the sunlight can't light up the whole ground and be above and light up the surface. That's what would happen. You see, that's not what we see in the video footage. Everything in that video footage. Now look at this guy. His camera's locked down and he's filming the sun. He's in the same area. He's in the northern hemisphere, close to the North Pole. He's offset around the orbit of the sun, and the sun is overhead. Look at the shadows. How can the sun come back and now move back over his head? And look at the light on the water in the background. It's flat. And the sun is orbiting above this person filming. Right? We just have to learn to look. And this is what we see. He's off center and the sun is orbiting around him. And in his frame of reference, that's what he sees. So if he wasn't turning and watching the sun, the shadows would behave the same as we see in the video footage. We just have to learn to look and think. You know, the education system doesn't teach us how to think. It teaches us what to think, not how to think and reason. And if you do think and reason, well, then you're going to be in trouble. You know, that's just the way the world is. You know, they're going to call you an idiot and a fool and all the rest. But really, you know, we need to think and reason for ourselves. We need to stop trusting the people who rule the system, because we just cattle to them. You know, they kill us and slaughter us and abuse us, and we just allow it to happen because we trust them. And they're the biggest lot of scumbag liars there is. You know, they lie about everything. So use your eyes and think. Just look. The sun's moving above his head. That's because the Earth's not spinning and the sun is orbiting above the person who filmed this. Okay, so now moving on. I mean, this bit is just so silly. I mean, if the Earth's a spinning ball, people all over the world will be spinning at different speeds. So how can people film time-lapse video footage and the sun's moving the same speed? You see, the guy at the equator, his time-lapse will show the sun spinning at a phenomenal speed. It will rise slowly and pick up speed and then set slowly, where the guy at the North Pole, it would be more constant. And another thing is, you know, they'll tell you if you're at the North Pole, you won't see or feel the Earth spin. That's nonsense. If it's turning at the equator, there's a turn at the North Pole. The North Pole can't just stand still. You know, it's silly. It's junk. It's physically impossible. If the Earth's spinning, it's spinning everywhere. At the North Pole and at the equator. You can't say, no, at the North Pole it's not turning. It's rubbish. Now, if you're at the North Pole, you'd be getting sick. If you're walking around, you'd fall over. Another issue is the sun. Remember, this guy is turning. He's off center. Right? So the landmass will be orbiting around him. So the landmass would be pushing back and forward. Can't keep the same distance. He'd be moving over the light. And another issue is the sun, from his frame of reference, would be zigzagging. Now people say, no, the sun's 150 million kilometers away. You won't see it move. The point is, with reference to his frame of reference, which is the horizon, how would the sun move with the horizon? That's the issue. The sun would zigzag. So we're going to look at this. Some people say, no, it won't zigzag. And they're saying, well, the man is turning 360. Oh. Okay, so we're just going to simplify this. You see, the sun would actually zigzag backwards and forwards, and we're going to prove it. We're going to look at the arguments and simplify it. Alright, so it's all these things. The light, the landmass pushing forward. Remember, everything would be turning in front of him, and the sun would be zigzagging in front of him. We put all this together, we understand that the man is not living on a spinning ball. He's standing on a fixed earth, and the sun is orbiting him. In other words, go into your kitchen, get a plate. Put your finger on the plate and turn the plate around. Your hand isn't turning 360 degrees. Your hand's facing the same direction. How do we know this? Well, because if your hand turned, you'd break your wrist. So you're using your hand faces the same direction, you're in the same position, and you're turning the plate. So some people will say, yeah, but the hand is fixed to the plate. So if the plate turns, your arm and your hand must move 90 degrees. Well, it's not like that. You'd break your arm and your hand. Your hand isn't turning 90 degrees. You can't add on the 90 degrees and then minus it off again. Another way to illustrate this point is the person is standing on the same side. So a person who's on the plate looking at you is not turning 360 if he's facing the same direction. He doesn't need to turn 360 degrees, and we're going to prove it in another way. Like, for example, on this train wheel, the shaft doesn't rotate 360, it's just facing the same direction. Its position X and Y is changed, that's all. Because if the shaft did turn 360, the engine would break. The whole mechanism would break. Think of a plotter that the architects use, or a laser cutter. The laser cutter doesn't turn, but it can cut out a circle. So what's happening, its position X and Y is changing. It's the same thing as the man who's standing on the earth if it was spinning looking at the sun. His position X and Y is changing in space. The cutter, the laser head, doesn't need to rotate. Okay? That makes sense? So don't get caught up in this, the man has to turn, because he simply doesn't. It's nonsense. Okay, so let's look at the footage again. Right. Just look. It's simple. Look at the light, look at the shadows. Right, and we see that the man is turning. That's why the mountains and everything around him is keeping its fixed relative position to him, because he's turning. The earth is not turning. Remember, for him to turn like this and everything has to be in perfect relation to him, he'd have to be standing dead center at the North Pole, and he's not. So what this shows is that the earth's not spinning and the man is turning. Look at the light. Oh, this is a giveaway. Look how the light reflects on the snow in front of him, right in front of him. Maybe if this was a ball, the light would be behind the other side. The light can't bend around and illuminate the snow in front of this man. It's just silly. Look at the clouds, flat. Land is flat. The earth is flat and is not spinning. And it is what it is. It's hard for some people to accept. But if you just look and think, you'll see it. It's as plain as daylight. The earth is flat and it's not spinning. And we just need to realize that the system we're living in is corrupt. And wicked people rule the system. And World War One, World War Two, Vietnam War, all the wars that we've had from Cambodia, the wars in Africa, show us that we're being manipulated, that they're consolidating their power and they want to rule the world. And they don't care how many people they kill, how much stuff they destroy, how many lives they take, what they destroy. They're pumping chemtrails in the Earth's atmosphere. They don't care. It's absolute power at any cost. You and I don't matter to these people. It is what it is. But yet people still trust the governments and think, oh, well, the government's got my back. Yeah, against the wall it has, yes. You just cannon fodder, man. So, back to the image. Look at the light on the water. It's flat. And the man is turning, looking at the sun. Right? It's simple enough. Same with this footage. We just have to look and think. I want to move on now and just use an example. When people build movie sets, they build everything miniature. And why? When they build it, they build everything flat and vertical. It's because this is a miniature of the real world we live in. So that when the camera pans down and the camera moves, that's how we see things. It's flat. The water level is flat. So on movie sets, the water is always level, the buildings are always vertical. And the lighting, they light the sets the same way as we see lighting in the real world. Because it's flat. You don't see a curve on this set. Because the producer would throw the production out. He'd say this is nonsense. So we live on a flat earth. It's not moving or not spinning. It's just that we've been brainwashed. You see, people will go and see these things. So look carefully. I'm going to leave you here and look and think. Train tracks that tell you a lot about the flatness of the earth. Why would they go through all the trouble? Why would they go through all the trouble of making sure the tracks are flat? Because imagine a train going down a hill with all that weight, metal on metal. It'll be a disaster. There'll be no traction to stop and no traction to pull. So watch and enjoy.